If you want to save money for your water bill when it comes to your garden, then you got to watch this episode. Today, I want to talk about how to use as little water as possible in your vegetable garden. I'm going to give you a few methods that work for me so that even though I don't have a formal irrigation system set up in my garden, I rarely water with the hose. And you won't have to either after we go through this episode together. My name's Nicole Burke. I'm the owner of Gardenary. I wrote these 2 books and I'm on a mission to get everybody gardening, including you. So if you're holding back from vegetable garden because you're thinking, really don't want that big water bill. I don't want to use all that water. I recently saw someone talking about how they would never have a vegetable garden because it takes so much water that it's really just not even worth the effort or the money. And I thought, what a shame. So this episode is for them. I'm growing over 250 square feet of vegetable garden space in my backyard. I do live in Tennessee, so we do have a good average rainfall, but we definitely go through seasons of drought and times when there's no rain at all. So the very first thing you've got to do in order to make sure that you do not have to water your garden a lot is to plant for the season. Oftentimes, the reason why we have to overwater or put lots of water on our gardens is because we're stretching the season too much. We're trying to grow a plant that belongs in a cooler season when it gets hot. And when that happens, you're gonna have to water more, and you don't want to do that. So one of the tricks of the trade that I use is to rotate my plants each and every season. So as soon as the temperatures start to move to the next season, I try to pull out all the plants that belonged in that previous season when it was cooler and move on to plants that really like that warmer temperature. The second way to make the most of your garden and to use less water is to plant densely, to plant intensively, to plant the Gardenary way. So when I grow gardens, I aim within 6 weeks of planting those gardens to have no bare soil. I mean that 6 weeks after I've put in my plants and seeds, when I come back to the garden space, I don't want to see any bare soil, any soil that's not covered by a plant or by a leaf. This is a game changer when it comes to keeping your garden watered and to not having to water very often. Why? Because exposed soil is soil that dries out fast, and covered soil is soil that retains water, moisture, and nutrients. So covering your soil is essential if you want to have a garden that you don't have to water often. So you want to have the same aim that we have with the Gardenary method, which is within 6 weeks of planting, you have no bare soil left. Now you might be thinking, Nicole, how do I plant enough plants so that there's no bare soil? Well, that's where point number 3 comes in. This is where you're going to bring in a lot of diversity of plants into each and every one of your raised garden beds. This is where my system, leaves, roots, and fruit, really takes shape. So in each and every garden, you're going to have leaves on the outside of the garden space, so herbs and greens. On the middle spaces, you're going to have root crops and things that are medium sized, things like radishes, carrots, beets. You can also have garlic and onions and celery. You can also have basil and Swiss chard and kale. And then right down the center of the beds is where you're going to have your fruiting crops. So things like tomatoes, pole beans, cucumbers, eggplants, any of those tall, big plants, they're going to be in the center. So when you plant your plants this way, a mix of leaves and roots and fruit, you end up with massive soil coverage, and you also end up with plants that work well together. So you've got these fruiting plants that need the most amount of sun. They're there in the center, but they're also creating shade and protection for your root crops and for your leafy greens on the outsides of those beds. So you've protected your soil by overplanting, and then by using this diversity, you've created a mix of plants inside this one bed that have different watering needs and can work together to maintain a really nice moisture balance throughout the season without you having to water a lot. Now, once you've got your garden set up this way, your job is only 2 things. 1, to daily check the weather, or do it over a week's time. But take a look at the weather before you water. So if you've got rain coming in a day or 2 days, then today is a great day to skip watering. Oftentimes we'll water consistently, we'll water frequently, but we're not looking ahead to when rain is coming later on in the week. And so we'll end up giving our garden way more water than it actually needs because we didn't anticipate the rain that was coming naturally from the sky. Next up, you want to water right at the roots of the plants. So I see a lot of people, they love that feeling of like watering the leaves of their plants, but that's really not going to conserve water and make the most of your resources. Instead, you want to get your hose, your sprayer way down low. If you have an ability to set up a soaker hose, even better, or a drip line, even best. But you want to have water running to the roots of your plants, not to the leaves. The leaves could absolutely get wet, but they're not going to be able to make the most of that water like the roots will. So when we're thinking about conservation, we want to think about the roots. And there you have it. Those are the steps to conserve water in any garden. First is only planting for the particular season. Plant plants that belong in the weather that you're currently living in. Step 2 is to densely plant. Fill up the garden so that there's no bare soil in 6 weeks. Step 3, use a diverse group of plants, leaves, roots, and fruit, all in one bed to protect the bed to grow together and to work well with one another as they go through the season. And then finally, watch the weather. Only water when you know that there's been no rain behind you and no rain coming. And when you schedule your watering, do it early in the morning and get the water right to the roots. And then start all over again. With this system, I rarely water my garden by hand, and yet I have a thriving, overgrowing garden using this system. In fact, every time people see my garden, one of their first questions, their first question is, do you fertilize? Which the answer is no. But their second question is, how often do you water? My answer is what you'll hear today, less than you think. This system really works. In fact, it is the best system for conserving water, and it will work for you no matter where you live. If you're in a hot climate, if you're in a mild climate, or a cold climate, planting densely, planting for the season you're in, watching the weather, and then carefully watering at the roots in the early mornings. This makes the most of every drip of water you have, and it will absolutely make the most of your vegetable garden. So if you want to know when to plant all these things in your garden that you're going to have to water, you want to check out the Gardenary calendar. You can download it for free at gardenary.com/calendar. You'll put in 2 dates. We give you all the rest, and then you'll know when to plant the plants so they're planted at the right season so you don't have to water them that much. Thanks so much for listening to the Grow Yourself podcast. I hope you'll subscribe and come back next week to hear more. I love hanging out with you, talking about the garden and how we can make it an everyday part of our lives, and we can save water doing it. I'll see you next time.